While we would have all loved our school lives to have looked like a scene out of High School Musical, back in reality, it's most likely that you either went to a private school where your school fees were enough to feed a small country, a public school once described by a wise philosopher as so random, or a Catholic school where your school bag, hat and socks were about twice the size that you are. Regardless of where you were schooled, you've been on the receiving end of the federal education funding pie. Welcome to electionWIRE. My name's Natasha and today we'll be talking about federal education funding. Have you ever wondered whether the Catholic school down the road gets the biggest slice? Or is it the public school that gets the biggest piece of the pie? Who gets more and why? Let's take a trip back 50 years ago to a world where state governments had the sole responsibility of funding our country's schools. They provided most of their dosh to public schools, while poor old Catholic and independent schools existed on next to nothing. This was until Robert Menzies had an epiphany. Federal education funding is a powerful bargaining chip in the election game. With this in mind, he began making promises to start funding both our country's public and non-government schools. Smooth move, Menzies. Many Catholic voters who had traditionally voted with the Labour Party switched their vote over to the Liberal Party, resulting in a decisive victory for Menzies in 1963. Win for Menzies and win for non-government education. Since then, with Section 96 of the Constitution to support it, this political bargaining chip has been passed down from generation to generation. So, just how is this money dished out? For non-government schools, it's based on their socio-economic status. Basically, that's their income, education and occupation of people in the area. The higher this is, the less money they get from the government. For government schools, it's based on the average government school's recurrent costs, basically how much it costs to run a school. In 2012 to 2013, it's estimated that $12.9 billion will be spent on our country's education, with about 65% of that going to non-government schools. But where has this system of funding left us? The recent Gonski Review delivered a report card on our country's education system, grading us with a big fat F. This system of funding has left us with one of the most segregated education systems in the Western world. Gonski says that student performance has actually declined over the past decade and that there is a huge gap between our highest and our lowest performing students. So, how can you use your vote to change this? Stay tuned for the next episode of electionWIRE, where we'll be breaking down our Polly's education promises for the next election.